You know, it was tough. It was a tough, third quarter. Just kind of thinking about. I kept thinking about it. All the guys kept preaching to me to let it go. We still got more game left. And then fourth quarter, when I kept hearing my number being called, I knew it was my opportunity again. So I had to step up.
Which was your biggest catch? Fourth down catch or the touchdown?
Fourth down, most definitely. Because without it, I don't get no touchdown.
Which was your favorite catch?
Fourth down catch. Because without it, I don't get a touchdown.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
From fantasy, what are you doing to fantasy GOAT? CeeDee Lamb makes a dramatic comeback. I'm hoping to do the same. It's noon on Peacock, but it's 5 o'clock somewhere. My name's Matthew Berry. He's Connor Rogers. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, where my thanks to Lawrence Jackson and Pat Kerrane for filling in yesterday as I celebrated the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, Lashon Tova, to everyone out there watching that celebrates. And I feel like, Connor, that that CeeDee Lamb catch is pretty much everything we have to hang our hat on from last night.
That was the moment.
That was right. Like it was just like boring. Yeah.
It was full of field goals until Saquon broke through. And never what you want to see on Monday Night Football is just a field goal contest between, two somewhat limited quarterbacks at this point.
I'll just say this. If you have to see a field goal contest, better to see on Monday night than Sunday night. Am I right? I'm right. All right. Let's go. So big show today, Connor.
Yeah, loaded.
Me and you. So we're going to break down this Monday Night Football game quickly. There's not a lot really to get into. And then we will talk about waivers.
Yeah.
We got week 4 waivers to get to. A lot of big name injuries, who you should bid on, who you should make claims to, who you can ignore. We'll get into all that. But why don't we start off on Monday night?
Yeah, let's start right there with CeeDee Lamb, the redeem game for CeeDee Lamb after the big drop. And then obviously, a brutal drop, wide open.
How do you do this? So for those of you watching on Peacock, you see, right, here comes CeeDee Lamb. We're watching the video right now, like literally in his hands, in his bread basket. Like this is like he had to move up, he had to gain speed a little bit, but you see him there. He's tapping his chest like this one's on me. But he's smiling, but it's my fault. But then, he makes the clutch fourth down grab to move the chains there when the Cowboys went for it, and then just on a fade, just a ridiculous one-handed catch in motion, both feet down. CeeDee Lamb, unbelievable, seals the game for the Cowboys here. Ultimately ends up the night with 8 receptions, 87 yards, a touchdown on 12 targets. And to me, that's the biggest key here. We talked about this throughout when Dak Prescott went down. What do you do with CeeDee Lamb? And the answer was nothing. He's still the focal point of this passing offense. He's still the guy that's going to get a ton of work. My expectation here is that Cooper Rush is under center next week. But Dak Prescott on Twitter, actually, Jane Ashley Slater, who does a real good job of covering the Cowboys, Jane getting a quote from Dak Prescott saying that, hey, he thinks week 5 against the Rams, he might be able to come back. That's a game. He's not ruling out a week 4 return, but there's a chance. It looks like a better than average chance that he comes back in week 5. You saw some preseason footage of him gripping a football already. Either way, whether it's Dak Prescott or Cooper Rush under center, CeeDee Lamb is who you drafted him to be, which is the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy.
That's the relief here, Matthew, is that Cooper Rush is out there, and you could still trust CeeDee Lamb. He's getting a ton of targets. The offense is absolutely running through him, at least the offense through the air. And Cooper Rush, while he is being a classic game-managing quarterback, all of his big throwing attempts seem to be going CeeDee's way. So that gives you a lot of comfort in this situation.
Yeah, so far through the season, he's wide receiver 23, but obviously wide receiver 6 this week and
big week
number 3. So, he's been more of a wide receiver 2 than the wide receiver 1 you drafted him for, but they play the Commanders on Sunday, and everybody scores on the Commanders. So no fear at all if you are a CeeDee Lamb manager. Continuing good days are ahead for you. To me, the other story is, and I want to credit, by the way, I want to take one moment here very quickly to credit Coach Jason Garrett. Coach Garrett was a guest on Fantasy Football pregame 2 weeks ago, before Cooper Rush's first start, and we were all like, what are we going to do? Is the sky falling here in Dallas? And Coach Garrett was very clear. Hey, we liked Cooper Rush in Dallas quite a bit. He's not a flashy name. He's not a big guy named Guy. Didn't come out of college with a lot of pedigree. But I will tell you, he works his butt off. He knows the offense. He can execute that system. Cowboys are going to be just fine. And Coach Garrett was right. Fantasy-wise, he was right. And by the way, real life right. Cowboys 2-0 under Cooper Rush. So credit to Coach Garrett right there. Running backs, I think, are interesting here,
yes.
Connor, right? Because Tony Pollard's, I think, suddenly useful.
You were saying it off the air that you can trust him in the flex spot, right? I think that's the most important thing with Tony Pollard, because you know what Zeke is going to be drafted to do. He's going to be a star, set him in your lineup every week at running back. You like his floor. But Tony Pollard, I feel like, is more of the ceiling guy, right? He needs that big play to thrive. But, Matthew, we're seeing the big plays from Tony Pollard, the explosiveness behind this offensive line.
Had a 46-yard rush in this one on his way to a 13-for-105 day on the ground. The concern here is, and I don't know if it's a big one, but the concern here is that in a game in which Michael Gallup did not play again, in a game in which Dalton Schultz was not active, Tony Pollard got one target. We had this whole expectation coming into the season that, he's going to be used in the passing game. And week one, I went on Football Night in America. I said, give me the over on 20 receiving yards for Tony Pollard, and didn't come close. Like, that was mind-boggling to me. So they aren't using him in the passing game. They're literally just using basically a two-headed rushing attack here.
Yep.
When they get in close, they prefer Ezekiel Elliott. You saw that Zeke came in on the fourth downs. They prefer him in pass pro. Zeke as well. So he's going to get a lot of the early down work. He's going to get the close-in stuff, and, of course, he's the one that cashes in the touchdown. But I think this is right. Tony Pollard, 13-for-105. Ezekiel Elliott, 15-for-73 and a touchdown. Zeke catches one ball for 2 yards. Pollard gets no targets as well. If those two guys are going to be basically even touch splits, right? If there's going to be an even split in terms of the touches between these guys, which is what it's looking like right now. Now, it's worth noting, Zeke played 41 snaps, Pollard played only 28. Again, they prefer Zeke in pass protection. But Pollard has that big play ability. I think Ezekiel Elliott is a solid RB2. You mentioned the floor. I think that's right. There's much more floor than upside with Zeke. I think he's in running back 2 where you're really hoping for a score. But I think by the end of the year, he has double-digit touchdowns. Tony Pollard is usable as a flex. For the season, Tony Pollard is the 25th best running back in fantasy. He was running back 28 in week 3. And I think that's right. So I think somebody that was drafted as an insurance back for Ezekiel Elliott, he certainly has value there, but he is a viable flex play moving forward.
I think the most disappointing thing about Pollard and what's been a good year for him, he's only been lined up in the slot or out wide just 20 times through 3 weeks. I feel like we got sucked into the talk or got excited about the talk of Zeke and Pollard on the field together, and we're just not seeing a lot of that right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So, I mean, again, maybe there's less upside with Pollard. As long as Ezekiel Elliott's healthy, the upside on Tony Pollard is always going to be limited, especially if they're just not using him in the passing game. That may change once Dak Prescott comes back.
Yeah.
They may feel like
Gallup.
The Gallup. Maybe once Dak is back, and they certainly care about pass protection, but maybe Dak, who's a little bit more mobile, probably a little bit more experienced at seeing blitzes, at seeing some of the different coverages that might come this way. Maybe they open up the playbook. Maybe they're trying to be more conservative here. Again, with no Schultz, no Gallup. But the fact that he just hasn't been targeted that much. Through the first 3 weeks, he's gotten 10 targets. 10 targets in 3 weeks, right? You know what I mean? Like,
with a backup quarterback, you think the backup quarterback is going to lean on him.
You would dump it off a little bit, right?
Yeah, but looking at the Giants side of things and sticking with the backfield here, Saquon Barkley, incredible comeback year so far. He's been the guy we've always hoped for and expected. 22.6 fantasy points per game through the 3 weeks. RB1, another big week with about 23 points.
He is the best running back in fantasy right now.
Easy to say.
That's not hyperbole. That's literally what he is. He is, through 3 weeks, he is the number 1 running back in fantasy. Worth noting, by the way, he was the most bet player to score the first touchdown on BetMGM at plus 600. He's the first guy getting in the end zone. Nice job.
Big hit for the public.
What?
Big hit for the public.
Big hit for the public.
You love to see that.
Listen, we're all about trying to take as much money from BetMGM as we can. Nice job on the public there. I mean, there's nothing else to say other than Saquon. But other than this, is that the only takeaway I can say is that if you drafted Saquon Barkley, A, good for you, and more importantly, that don't trade him. Like, for anyone that might think I want to sell high or anything like that, I would not do that. This is legit. He is a locked-in RB1 for the rest of the year. I don't think there's anything much else to talk about here with the Giants offense. Tough news as literally just got an alert from the Fantasy Life app. This is per Pat Leonard, who covers the team for the New York Daily News. Pat tweeting out, Sterling Shepard tore his left ACL. His season is over, per Brian Daboll, #Giants. So awful to see, tough injury. We like Sterling. We wish him a speedy recovery. But unfortunately, we are a fantasy football show, and when there's news in the world of the NFL, there's a fantasy reaction to that. So while we are not, while we certainly wish Sterling the best, the fact of the matter is that a leading receiver for the Giants is out for the year. That means there's a fantasy impact to that, and the fantasy impact to that is like, I think the Giants receiver you'd want to pick up to replace Sterling Shepard hasn't played yet this year. I think it's Wan'Dale Robinson, if anyone. Right? I mean, it's not a good offense. It's not a good offense. It's a low, conservative offense. It runs through Saquon Barkley. But if you're looking to the waiver wire, Wan'Dale Robinson to me is the most interesting guy.
He is, because there's a lot of hope with Wan'Dale. They invested a second-round pick in him. The staff really, really likes him. They can get creative with the usage of him. And here's the other side of it, Matthew. Galladay, the staff does not like him, and when they put him on the field, he's ineffective with that awful drop. Kadarius Toney can basically never practice, which is a huge problem. So you have to find somebody, go with the guy that this regime believes in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he had the one catch for 5 yards. He leads the first game early of the season, hasn't played, didn't play in week 2 or week 3. We hope he comes back soon. It isn't right. It is a new regime in New York. They drafted Wan'Dale in the second round. They like him. There's a lot of buzz for him in the preseason. So I'm still holding up hope there. But otherwise, just feels like, Richie James, David Sills. Kadarius Toney. It's interesting. We had Mike Florio on Fantasy Football Pregame, of course, from Pro Football Talk. And one of the things he mentioned about Cole Beasley going to the Buccaneers, well, he talked about the fact that he was signed to the practice squad with the Buccaneers. Beasley really wanted to play with Tom Brady. He goes back to the practice squad. Could the Giants, his former coach and Brian Daboll, obviously offensive coordinator in Buffalo, there has been interest there. Could they say, listen, Cole, what's it going to take to get you here and play the slot for us? Because they're 2-1. Giants are 2-1, and they're in the thick of it. They've just lost Sterling Shepard. Might be interesting to see if there's a reunion there with Beasley in New York. At the moment, he's currently in Tampa Bay. Let's move now to waiver wire.
For the running backs. A huge week for the running backs on the waiver wire. And, who better to start with than Jamaal Williams, of course, unfortunately due to the DeAndre Swift injury. But Jamaal Williams was flagged for a touchdown dance on Sunday. Let's hear what he thought about the penalty.
Right. There's a lot of hips thrusting.
Yes,
what it was.
Plenty. Not thrusting, waving.
Interesting.
Hip waving, as
This
Jamaal
is Jamaal
said.
Williams after the game.
Man, I've been doing that forever. That's why I was tripping. I thought it was a holding call or something. I'm like, did they just flag me for doing the dance that I've been doing forever? Literally forever. Before Key and Peele, before all the little hips, almost cuss. Before all the hip stuff, I've been doing this forever. So now my stuff is correlated to nothing against them, But that's my hips, It's not even thrusting. It's more like a wave, Thrusting is, yeah. Mine is a wave. That's how I actually get away with it. I've been getting away with it all these years, but now they want to bust me for it. I was pissed.
Look at this. You see video of it right now. It is. That's more of a wave. I mean, admittedly, if I did that in the halls of NBC, HR might have a question for me.
More than a flag.
It would be more than a flag.
Yeah.
I might get
maybe a fine.
Right. I don't think I could get away with a wave, but I don't have the kind of moves that Jamaal Williams does. I would just look like an old man.
It's a wave.
Not
a thrust.
Like if I was just, anyway. What's interesting is I was just trying to do it here for a second, and my chest, suddenly I'm all chest, because I wanted to I was trying to
Oh boy.
I'm just no, but it's awkward, right? It's hard.
Yeah.
Suddenly now I'm the Three Amigos. All of a
yeah,
sudden,
you're hula hooping.
It is. You're hula hooping a little bit.
Yes.
It's hard to do.
Give the man his credit.
There you go.
It's not worth a penalty.
It's not worth a penalty. But here's what Jamaal Williams is doing. He's absolutely crushing. Through 3 weeks, he's the 8th best running back in fantasy. They trust him in the goal line. I mean, the thing about Jamaal Williams is he's always been a good running back.
Yes.
He was stuck behind Aaron Jones in Green Bay. He's been stuck behind DeAndre Swift in Detroit. But, he's a talented running back. We've talked about this. He has always been fantasy productive. Over the course of his career, when he's gotten the start in Green Bay, when he's gotten the start in Detroit, he's a guy that has been able to do it. So you think about week 3, limited touches for DeAndre Swift, who's not 100% healthy, 22 for 107 and 2 touchdowns in terms of total touches. Listen, he shouldn't be available in your league. He's available in about 40% of of Yahoo leagues, probably about 40% of ESPN leagues as well. Like it's whatever, old habits die hard. But the truth of the matter is if Jamaal Williams is available in your league, you need a better league. But
yeah, not a lot of people paying attention.
But he's out there. I don't know how he's available in 39% of Yahoo leagues, but he is. So if for some reason he is available, he is the number 1 waiver pick because even if DeAndre Swift comes back, it is clear Jamaal Williams has complete standalone value. But if Swift were to miss any time, and there's some concern about that, right, at this point, then yes, I mean, Williams is a top 10 running back as well. Just want to mention real quickly, best friends with our researcher Blake Friedman, Craig Reynolds. Craig Reynolds, Detroit Lions running back, who had kind of a nice little run towards the end of last year, should see, again, if Swift misses time, Reynolds will take, because they're not going to give it all to Jamaal Williams.
They're a run-heavy team.
It's a run-heavy team. It's a good offensive line. So if those are in deeper leagues, 14-team and deeper, I do think Craig Reynolds merits maybe a mention here. Same thing. This is another one that's shocking to me, Connor. How is Alexander Mattison 45% available?
And it's every year he's impactful. Every year. Like there's 3 weeks a year he can win you your week.
What are we doing?
It doesn't make any sense. Explain it.
Well, I can't.
I want answers.
People are in bad leagues.
Yes.
People are in bad leagues. Okay. He's 45% available, Alexander Mattison. Dalvin Cook, 2 things we know. Like death, taxes, here's 2 other things we know. Dalvin Cook can't stay healthy. He's literally never played every game in an NFL season in his career. He never has.
Yep.
Super talented, but he never has played every game in an NFL career. And that when Alexander Mattison gets work, he's productive. He's insanely productive. He had 4 starts last year. He averaged 26 touches a game in those 26 touches a game in those games that he started. 21.7 fantasy points per game in the 4 starts last year. Dalvin Cook is 100% rostered. How is Alexander Mattison not 100% rostered? Because if you have Dalvin Cook, knowing what investment you made in Dalvin Cook, and knowing that he doesn't play every game. Anyway,
he's the Rolls Royce of handcuffs.
Of insurance running backs, yes. There's no question about it. Alexander Mattison needs to be rostered. They're playing London. They're playing in London. Cheerio, my friends, against the Saints this week. Get yourself some Alexander Mattison because there's talk that he's going to play through. He's going to wear the harness again. He's going to play through. We'll see. But again, it's just a reminder that if Dalvin Cook misses, you want yourself some Alexander Mattison. A guy that should have been rostered, he is available in more than 51% of leagues, but I want to move on to Khalil Herbert.
You've been saying this one for a couple weeks now.
Connor, you have as well. I don't know what his profile was out of college. Felt like he sort of came out of nowhere.
Well, I'll tell you this with Khalil Herbert. He's been productive since his last year. College, he was a late breakout. That was the thing with him. So then he becomes a late draft pick. The number that stands out to me with him is this week, and this is what he does. Over 84% of his yards came after contact. This is somebody that even behind a questionable offensive line creates his own yards over and over again.
Questionable is the nicest thing anyone's ever said about the Bears offensive line. Dude,
it's bad.
It's not so good, and yet Khalil Herbert is really good. 169 total yards, 2 touchdowns on 22 touches last week against the Texans. That's more yards than Dave Montgomery has ever had in a single game in his career. He had 2 starts last year. He averaged 18.8 fantasy points per game, and the kid can play. And one of the reasons why I and I think other people were down on Dave Montgomery coming into the season. We're like, look, this is a new regime under Matt Eberflus and his staff, right? They have no loyalty to David Montgomery, and they're sitting there going like, hey, we're trying to win games for Chicago, and we're looking around at what we got, and this kid can play. Khalil Herbert can play, and we're not saying that Dave Montgomery can't, but Herbert can play. He deserves snaps, and he deserves. So the concern was that Montgomery might be in a timeshare with Khalil Herbert, and so Herbert was a popular insurance back. He's been picked up a decent amount, and certainly, look, there's a chance that Montgomery misses some time as well. And so, we're doing this on a Tuesday as news is starting to roll in. But what I would say here is that Herbert has earned a larger share of this backfield, and certainly if Montgomery misses time, also a top 10 running back.
And there's a theme with the last three guys we've gone over, with Swift, Cook, and now David Montgomery. They have wear and tear every single season. So even if their coaches are saying, hey, it's day to day, it's week to week, this is something that can come back instantly as soon as they return. Their backups they're extremely valuable, all of them.
Yeah. And I think it just depends on where you are in terms of your league, your season. You know, are you like, hey, you've had some injuries, I got to find a guy to start this week? Or are you like, you know what, I can draft for some depth. So if you feel like you're like all these guys, again, potentially based on the availability of DeAndre Swift, Dalvin Cook, and David Montgomery, could be huge. But if all three of those guys, if Cook, Montgomery, and Swift are all active this week, then these guys are all like, you know, in the case of Jamaal Williams, a flex play. Herbert and Madison, maybe not. You know, Herbert might be a viable flex play. We'll see the reports we get in. But my point is those are big upside plays for at some point in the season when, if there is an injury or they get more opportunity, they could explode. The next guys we're going to talk about, these are just like, they're fine. These are like, I got to plug a hole.
Yeah,
Barry, I'm desperate. Throws. You know, like I'm in a deeper league. I need a flex play.
A league paying attention to the world.
I just need a live body. Just give me somebody with a pulse that can get me something at the running back position, and that's what these guys are.
Your Commanders.
Yeah.
J.D. McKissic, your Commanders, available in 74% of leagues, so he's out there in most of them. And he's pretty much steady Eddie 10 points a week because he catches the football and he gets enough targets.
13 catches over his last 2 games, 9 targets in week 3. As the Commanders are trailing, they like him in 3-minute. They like him in passing down situations. And given how poorly the Commanders' defense has played so far this year, they're going to be in that situation a lot. Now, they played Dallas, which is a slow-moving offense on Sunday, but still, McKissic is playing a decent amount of snaps until Brian Robinson comes back. And it is worth mentioning that is also a guy, like in a deeper league, grab and stash because he can come back in week 5. But yeah, otherwise, McKissic, to me, is just, you know, like he's a viable flex play. He's somebody that, right, there's limited upside there with McKissic, but there's also a nice floor of like sort of like, hey, I need a body at running back. That is J.D. McKissic. Yeah, he qualifies at running back.
If you need 10 points in your flex spot, especially this week, we'll get into that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there when Brian Robinson returns, how that backfield's going to shake out. That's going to be very interesting.
Very interesting. But anyway, for this week against the Cowboys, you know, I think he's a viable flex. You know, he was running back 17 this past week. Again, in games in which we expect the Commanders to have to throw a lot because they'll be down, which we expected against the Eagles, he is viable.
All right, looking over at Cincinnati, Samaje Perine, 94% availability right now. Joe Mixon did not finish this game with the sore ankle. They were up 2 scores against the Jets, and they were just run. Perine looked good, 12 touches, 61 yards, and the touchdown, as once again, Mixon was out. That's the key. We know they're going to force-feed Mixon. But Perine, he's available in almost every league. Is there any urge there to pick him up and stash him?
Potentially. Again, sort of what we're talking about here with Madison or with Herbert, with Jamaal Williams. Like, if you're the starting running back for the Cincinnati Bengals, you're going to have value. And it is going to be Samaje Perine if anything were to happen to Joe Mixon. You mentioned leaving the fourth quarter, only playing like whatever it was, the 2 snaps in the fourth quarter. They're the Thursday night game. They're playing the Miami Dolphins on Thursday night, so that's a quick turnaround for a guy that's so important to them. Now, all the reports out of Cincinnati right now are like, no, he's going to be fine, he's going to play, and Mixon's a very tough guy. But with a short turnaround, it's just worth noting, again, like we see this every year, when there are productive running, there aren't a lot of them, but when you know who the backup is, it's a very small sort of subset here. But when you know, like, okay, if this productive fantasy starting running back goes down, we know exactly who the backup would be, and we think that person would be productive. In those scenarios, all those running backs need to be rostered. And that's the case with Jamaal Williams. It's the case with Alexander Madison, Khalil Herbert. And it's the case with Samaje Perine. He would be the guy. You'd see some Chris Evans mixed in on third down. But it would be Samaje Perine who would be the starting running back of the Cincinnati Bengals. He scored the receiving touchdown last week. 12 touches for 61 and the score. Perine's a nice player. They like him a lot. They probably used him too much in the Super Bowl last year. The Bengals probably regret that. But they used him throughout on third down all last year. Zach Taylor likes him. So Perine would be the guy. I think he should be rostered in 100% of leagues because Joe Mixon is rostered in 100% of leagues. Again, there's so few running backs out there that are productive. If you know you can grab the backup of your star, then I think it's interesting. Now, again, like that's not always the case. Like with Derrick Henry? Is it Dontrell Hilliard? Is it Hassan Hawkins? There's other running backs that if they went down, you're not really sure who the guy would be. But in this particular case, we know who it would be. One last guy I just want to mention real quickly is Tyler Algier. He's playing the Browns this week. He's played 2 games in which he's been active. He's gotten 17 touches. Cordell Patterson's on the wrong side of 30, and now he had a resurgence again last week in Seattle. Huge game for him. But feels like they want to get Algier more involved, and they don't want Patterson to touch the ball as much as he has been recently.
Yeah, and the thing is with Algier, just a goal line monster at this point. They love him down at the goal line. So that's going to be his value. But once again, the Falcons offense, we need to actually see it humming full force. Kyle Pitts freed, by the way.
Yep. You were welcome, America. Thank God. Thank God Kyle Pitts is free. But again, they're still figuring out that Falcons offense. So Algier is an interesting stash. Also, we'll see what happens when Damian Williams comes back. He was the starting running back at the start of and then he got hurt like 10 touches in. But Algier is sort of an interesting name to keep for deeper leagues as well, as we see that Falcons backfield get a little bit more clarity as well.
All right, we're going to go to break, but when we get back, we are not done with waivers. Time to talk wide receivers. Romeo Doubs, Russell Gage, right after this.
Is Romeo just basically, I'm too talented for you to limit how much I can play? Is he at a point where you got to live with whatever mistakes he's going to make and you got to correct them, but he needs to play more because of what he's shown you?
Yeah, he certainly has earned it, and he's going to get that opportunity. Certainly, with having a guy like Sammy out, it's just naturally going to happen for him, where he's going to play more snaps. And I thought he made the most of them yesterday. I thought he did an outstanding job. He was a guy that showed up consistently, being able to separate versus the man coverage that we were getting. I thought he did an outstanding job.
That is Packers head coach Matt LaFleur on rookie wide receiver Romeo Doubs. He said it earlier last week. We're going to put more on his plate this week. If you listen to a head coach, which is never a good idea, let me be honest, but this time it was, you were rewarded. Doubs in week 3, 8 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown, team-high 8 targets. He hauled in all of them. Barry, I got to ask you, is the Doubs show here to stay? We've been waiting.
I think so.
You're in.
Because the numbers you just mentioned, that was on the road at Tampa Bay. Like, the secondary of the Buccaneers is no slouch, right? I mean, he's doing that against Jamel Dean. He's doing that against Carlton Davis. Like, he's doing that against real people.
Todd Bowles' defense.
Right, yeah, exactly. He's doing that against real people. And so, the fact of the matter is that in a game in which Aaron Rodgers needed to win, wanted to win, he got targeted. Not Alan Lazard, not Bob Tunyon. It was
not Aaron Jones.
Not Aaron Jones. It was Romeo Doubs. He's run a route on almost 70% of pass plays so far this season. He's available in 75% of Yahoo leagues. Yeah, give me some Romeo Doubs this week. I think he should be the #1 waiver wire pickup at the wide receiver position.
Aaron Rodgers had a passer rating of 144 when targeting Doubs, so I think Rodgers is going to go back to him quite consistently.
We heard him praise him in the preseason. It's proven into the regular season in terms of the production. They play the Patriots on Sunday. Give me some Romeo Doubs.
Another veteran quarterback that's looking for anybody and everybody, Tom Brady, threw a lot to Russell Gage this week, available in 58% of leagues. Yes, we are waiting on a lot of Buccaneers reinforcements right now, but in the meantime, Gage went for 12 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown, targeted 13 times. That's not sustainable.
No, and it's so frustrating because why didn't this happen the week before? Like, we thought it would, and then it finally did. Like,
this is how things go.
The Buccaneers offense is a mess, and we're hopefully getting Chris Godwin back soon. Obviously, Mike Evans will return. We still don't know the status of Julio Jones. I guess so. They added Cole Beasley. They like Beasley as well. So, it's super interesting. Like, this was a good game for Russell Gage, and I get it. But I think he's more of a floor play than an upside thing, and I think there's a very good chance that at the end of the year, when we look back, this was Russell Gage's best game of the season.
Yeah, you're not as jacked up about this one as the Doubs conversation. So.
I'm not, just because, again, fantasy production comes from two things. It comes from talent and it comes from opportunity. I think he's talented. I think Romeo Doubs is talented. I know Romeo Doubs has an opportunity. I don't know what it is with Russell Gage. It was so weird, again, because Evans, Godwin, Julio all out for that game against the Packers. Like, Like, they're trying to find themselves in Tampa Bay in terms of that offense. And so reinforcements are coming. Again, I think most of them will be back. One of the other things that's also interesting that I'll just throw this out there since we're talking Tampa Bay. Like, I'm in a super deep league. I'm at Scott Fishbowl, and which is a charity league that a lot of people play in. Like, it's like a 3,000 person tournament. It's like this insanely deep, crazy thing. But in that league, I went ahead this weekend and I picked up Rob Gronkowski, just for S&Gs, as they say. You know what? Like, you don't know. You know, I just sort of think, if I'm Tom Brady, I'm like, listen, man, listen, this is me. Tom Gronk. Hey, listen, Gronk. It's me, TB. Listen, you know how Giselle's all mad at me, you know, because I left to come back. So it's my one last year. What you doing? I need you. I need you. Like, you know, put down the funnel. Tell Camille you'll see her soon, and let's get going.
Have a protein shake.
Have a protein shake. And let's get going. Yeah. Bring whatever Gronk you need. Bring how many Gronkowskis you need.
Yes.
Because there's like 100 of them. Just get down here. That's all I'm asking. I need you, Gronk. I need you. Come here quickly. I have to feel like that call, if it hasn't happened already, it's going to happen soon, because Brady's sitting there going like, what are we doing, guys?
Brady always goes back to his old friends in times of need, and it just feels like Gronk. I wouldn't be shocked. All right, looking at another powerhouse offense this time in the AFC, we've talked all about Stephon Diggs. We've talked all about Gabe Davis. Isaiah McKenzie getting in on the fun. He was always the guy over summer that we're like, okay, outside of the big obvious three, maybe Isaiah McKenzie. 7 catches, 76 yards, and touchdown on 9 targets. The Buffalo offensive output in this game was bananas.
Right. You know, and I'm changing my tune because, like, 2 weeks ago after that Monday night game, I'm like, no Gabe Davis, and still McKenzie couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
And, like, it just,
it's all Diggs.
You know, like, it's all Diggs, and okay, whatever. But the fact of the matter is we now have 3 weeks of data here, and his snap rate has increased each game so far this season, right? 7 for 76 and 1 touchdown on the 9 targets, as you mentioned here. I think this is interesting. 2 of the 3 games so far this year, he's been targeted inside the 10-yard line. They're using him. It is clear that, as I sit here, he played 51% of the snaps last week in week number 3. I think that's encouraging. That's an encouraging sign. We forget, like, he had that one huge game last year, but he was basically a part-time player for the Bills last season. And so maybe it's just kind of getting him up to speed and getting him more and more comfortable, him and Josh Allen more comfortable on the same page. And so expanding his route tree a little bit as well. He's wide receiver 35 on the season. He was a top 10 wide receiver here in week number 3. You know, if you're throwing darts, which is what you're really doing during the waiver wire, like, a piece of the Bills offense is not a bad place to throw a dart.
I'm with you. And with the Bills, how often they've attacked outside the numbers with Diggs, Gabe Davis. Eventually, teams are just going to give him the middle of the field and say, we have to take away something. That's where McKenzie's going to live. So he's interesting, available in almost 60% of leagues. So he's out there right now in a good offense. All right, the inevitable Cardinals wide receiver Greg Dortch, somehow still available in 83% of leagues. All he's done the last 2 weeks is caught 1 million passes. He's helping out in PPR format. 15.3 points per game this season. That is good for wide receiver 21. I know Hopkins is going to be back at some point, but Kyler Murray is looking Dortch's way consistently.
He's played 86% of the snaps. He's out there.
He's out there.
He's out there a ton. And I feel like, this is not fantasy football. Is an emotional game. And I just wonder, Connor, if he had a cooler name.
Would people care?
Yeah. Greg Dortch sounds like a science teacher.
It does.
Mr. Dortch.
Yeah, it's like the substitute.
He's the substitute.
Yeah,
he's like, sorry, Mr. Dortch, I haven't gotten my permission slip for the field trip yet. I'm on it. Hey, Mr. Dortch, can I have some extra credit? Right?
It's tough.
I mean, it feels like, hi, Fidelity Insurance here. I'm Greg Dortch. Like somebody that sells, like he's going to sell me like some equity in my house or something. I don't know. Like it's not a cool name, Greg Dortch.
The accounting cubicle from 9 to 5.
I mean, I feel like if he had a cooler name, if he had a nickname, maybe if he was a higher, if he was like Dorchy McDorcherson, maybe.
The Dorch Master.
I just feel like the fantasy community is just sort of like, fluky. Still fluky. Like, I mean, we're 3 weeks in, but right, if we called him the human Dortch,
I would have to.
Now you're in.
We're
right?
Dortch's marketing team.
Now you're printing up T-shirts.
Yes.
Now you got bumper stickers. Yeah. Now you're trying to do trends on TikTok with #HumanDorch. Yeah. So suddenly that becomes interesting to me. He's playing the Carolina Panthers this week. He's available in 83% of leagues. As long as Rondell Moore continues to be out, Greg Dortch, the human Dortch, is going to have a role in this Cardinals offense. And so, pretty interesting as well, especially considering, by the way, AJ Green beat up. He's hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
Seems
we're at the end of the road here. We could say that.
Let's be honest, right? And
yeah.
We've still got a couple games before DeAndre Hopkins comes back. The human Dortch, I think, is viable here for at least a couple more weeks. He's a top 21 wide receiver on the season.
Crazy. All right, with the moving over to the Chargers here, Josh Palmer available in 73% of leagues. You've told the story with Josh Palmer as it is. If one of the starters are out, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, play Josh Palmer, and he will produce. The problem now is Keenan Allen is expected to return this week. Are we getting away from the Josh Palmer train when he becomes number 3?
Again, it depends on what you need. If you need somebody this week, there are other guys out here that we think will play and be productive. If you're just you know what, I'm just trying to bolster my bench, then I think Josh Palmer makes a lot of sense. He's a talented wide receiver.
Yeah.
And do I think that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen play every single game from here on out? No, I think there's a chance they miss. There's also a chance that this offense, as Herbert gets healthier, becomes better, and Palmer maybe becomes a viable, wide receiver 3 or 4 on a consistent basis. But certainly, talent and potential for opportunity are reasons why you might think about rostering Josh Palmer.
Yeah, the Chargers dealing with a lot of different injuries right now. Potentially lost left tackle Rashawn Slater with the biceps injury. We know Herbert's banged up.
It's been tough for the Bolts.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Chargers, the injuries just always catch up to them. So
it does. It's so weird. I feel so bad for my friends that are Charger fans. I will say that if Keenan Allen can't play this week against the Texans, Palmer would be right back into my lineup.
All right, everybody laughed at them in the offseason when the Jaguars paid Christian Kirk and Zay Jones a lot of money, but boy, does it look like it's worked out so far. Trevor Lawrence looks great. Zay Jones available in 90% of leagues. He's an afterthought at this point, coming off a 10-target, 10-catch, 85 yards, and a score in Week 3. I'm not going to ask you if that's sustainable because that's not fair to Zay Jones, but 90% available.
Dude,
I mean, that's ridiculous.
He's got 9 or more targets in 2 out of the 3 games so far this year. He's got a 23% target share on the season. So far this year, he's a top 25 fantasy wide receiver. Through 3 games, he's a top 25 wide receiver, and a top 25 wide receiver should not be available in 90% of Yahoo leagues. 2 things we know for sure. The Jaguars are always going to be throwing. It is a pass-first offense under Doug Peterson, which has always been his case. Again, he's a former NFL quarterback, right, who comes from the Andy Reid School of Coaching. Doug Peterson's going to want to throw. So that's already there, and he's got a good quarterback.
That's the key.
So he's getting a decent target share on a pass-first offense with a good quarterback. Yeah, give me some Zay Jones. I'm in. I'm in on him this week. I'm in on him the rest of the way as well.
Yeah, Jaguars offense, you could say they're exciting right now. There's a lot to be excited about with them. Okay, the Raiders, the only 0-3 team in the NFL, but they actually have some big-time fantasy output through the air. Mac Hollins. Mac Hollins is available in almost every league, 98%.
I will tell you, so every year I get to go to something called the NFLPA Rookie Premiere.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Okay,
very well.
yeah, and basically what I do is they invite me out there, and they invite 40 of the most, they're all offensive players basically, the 40 of the most marketable players, rookies. And it's a chance for them to meet the rookies, meet all the partners of the NFLPA, and it's like, it's brands like it's Pepsi, and they see their EA Matting rating for the first time. They sign their trading cards for the first time. It's the first time they get to take pictures in their uniforms. Blah blah blah, all sorts of stuff. And the NFLPA is so gracious. They've been such good friends to me in the program. All the jerseys you see behind us here on the wall are all from the NFLPA and our friends at Fanatics. So, it's they're wonderful partners and friends, and so every year they invite me out. And the reason I bring this up is that I interviewed Mac Hollins when he was a rookie for the Eagles. And I got to tell you, I've been going, I think, 6 years now. I've been going this 6 years. To this day, my favorite interview of all the people I've met is Mac Hollins. He is awesome. I love this kid. I was just like, oh my God, he's super personable and charming and funny, and I get about 15 minutes with each of these kids. And I said to him, listen, I hope your career is long and prosperous, but whenever it's over, you should immediately go into broadcasting because you're amazing, dude. And so Matt Collins has just been a guy that I've always sort of rooted for from that time that I met him. And it's great to see, like, he's had a couple of flashes with Philadelphia, Miami as well. Yep. Like, I've tracked his career, and he seems to have found a home in Las Vegas. He's run a route on 98% of pass plays so far this season. I know people will point to, hey, there was no Hunter Renfrow. I get it.
Great lettuce, too.
You're right, great lettuce. Like, unbelievable. Look at this. The hair has grown since I have seen him as well. But the fact is they played 97% of the snaps. He got, he's getting more targets, more receiving yards, as you see here on your screen. Obviously, the production in week 3 much more significant than it was in week 1 or 2. But the fact of the matter is that he's playing on the outside. You've got him and Adams on the outside, Renfrow in the slot along with Waller. There are concerns how much volume can he get because you've still got Adams, Renfrow, Waller, and Jacobs. So at best he's probably the 5th option. But the Raiders are a team that throws a lot. It is one of the more pass-heavy teams in the NFL. I think he's a talented player.
Yeah.
And it feels like he's found a home in Las Vegas. Darren Waller has never been the picture of health as well. And so as teams continue to double and triple Devontae Adams, and Renfrow's in the slot, I do think Matt Collins is a deeper league consideration.
A great breakout for a guy drafted as a special teamer / project at wide receiver. That project is now paying dividends, and you nailed it. Less than 15% of his snaps are in the slot. He's playing out wide. So if Renfrow's back, you don't wipe Matt Collins off the board.
He's still on the board, and it feels like he's getting a connection with Derek Carr. He's made some big-time catches, which quarterbacks love, right? I'm throwing it up there, and Matt Collins is coming down with the ball. So it's just great to see. He's a kid that I root for and like a lot as well. And so, anyway, happy to see Matt Collins having a lot of production and found a home in Las Vegas. Let's move on to DJ Chark, who's now in Detroit. Here's the only concern, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, our Lord and Savior, right? I mean, like...
legendary.
Right? I don't know. Has the ankle injury. He played through it. I don't know. He is a sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Chark has 6 targets in 2 of the 3 games this season. We've seen him be fantasy productive. It is a offense that we know can put up fantasy points. If Amon-Ra St. Brown misses any time, Chark would be the obvious beneficiary. He's available in 56% of Yahoo leagues. So he's a little bit deeper on the list. Same with his teammate Josh Reynolds, who got a team-high 10 targets and 96 yards week 3. I prefer Chark to Reynolds. I know Reynolds has been there longer, but I just think Chark's the better player if I'm picking up but neither of them are Amon-Ra St. Brown.
That's right, and I think what's knocking on the door is Jameson Williams is going to play this year, so I think that has a huge impact on Josh Reynolds more so than Chark. That would give them a lot of speed out there. All right, moving over to the Patriots real quick. Devontae Parker. Yes, Devontae Parker had 5 catches for 156 yards on 10 targets. Mac Jones leaves the game with an ankle injury that does seem serious, a high ankle sprain. This feels a little flash in the pan. Don't love it. Don't love buying in on it.
No Jacoby Myers in this game as well. And so what does this offense look like under Brian Hoyer? It's still going to be run heavy. Like, Devontae Parker's, they're also on the road at Green Bay this week. You don't love the matchup here. This is, for me, this is a wait and see on Parker. I'm not rushing to the waiver wire on Devontae Parker.
Let's flip it the other way and look at 2 potential drop situations. You and I have touched on this one, I think, a week ago with Darnell Mooney. He is rostered in 70% of leagues. The bottom line is he's averaging 2 points a game right now because out of Darnell Mooney's fault, they do not throw the football. It's crazy.
So 4 catches for 27 yards. That's a bad game. That's a bad game. Like if you're like, oh, hey, this guy got 4 for 27, you're like,
it's not a great half.
It's not a great half. It's definitely a bad game. You know what it is, though? It's an awful season. That's what Darnell Mooney's done this season. 4 for 27. Dude, 4 for 27. The entire Bears staff should be fired just for that alone. Because Darnell Mooney can play football.
Yeah,
there's no reason why Darnell Mooney should have only 4 receptions for 27 yards. But that's what we're sitting here with. Last week I said, you know what, I'm not dumping him yet. I want to bench him. I want to wait and see. I've seen.
Are you out?
I'm out on Darnell Mooney. I'm like a Vegas dealer. This is what you do.
All right, one more. Looking at the Steelers, we know Mitch Trubisky has had his problems, and that has led to problems for Chase Claypool. Also rostered in 70% of leagues. Only 11 catches for under 80 yards through 3 games.
Until the quarterback situation improves, it's hard to really trust Chase Claypool. I don't mind hanging on to him if you have him, but I also don't mind dropping him. Let me put it this way. If he was available in my league, I'm not like, ooh, that's who I want to go grab. I would rather if I'm investing in a non-Deontay Johnson wide receiver, I'd much rather take George Pickens. I'd much rather go to the waiver wire and grab George Pickens, whose numbers don't look great. 3 for 36 this past Thursday night, but we saw that catch. Like, George Pickens, it's coming. It's just a matter of time. I think Kenny Pickett will get there eventually, but George Pickens is too talented. Like, I'd rather be earlier than late on George Pickens, and so I prefer Pickens to Claypool if I'm picking a non-Deontay Johnson wide receiver for the Steelers.
All right. Justin Fields did not have a good game Sunday, but don't take it from us. Quarterback waiver wire coming up next. We are here to help.
Problem.
I played straight up. I just played like, I want to say the A word, but I'm not going to do that. But I just played like trash. Played terrible, and really just got to be better.
One of these days, I'm going to have to give a press conference like that. Listen, week 4 picks.
Didn't have it.
I'm sorry, I didn't have it. I prognosticated like trash. I just got to get better. I'll do that. I haven't done that yet, but I'm sure
we'll set up like a podium.
Oh, yeah.
In front of the Applebee's logo.
100%. We'll figure that out. Welcome to Dumpsville, Justin Fields.
Yeah,
appreciate him owning it. Appreciate him understanding and appreciating that. But the fact of the matter is like, you're not running as much as we need you to. You're not throwing as much. Like,
not throwing at all.
I mean, he's QB 31 on the season. He's QB 31 on the season. He's on pace to throw less than 1,700 yards. He's on pace for 11 passing touchdowns and 23 interceptions.
Not where you want to be.
Not.
If you drafted Justin Fields
to be,
and you're holding on, stop doing that right now and find a streaming option, and that's what we're here to do right now.
We are. He's rostered in 52% of leagues. It needs to be 0.
Yeah.
It needs to be 0% of leagues until we see something on the field. We just haven't seen it yet. A guy that needs to be rostered, I think, in 100% of leagues, even if you have a quarterback, because there's always somebody who needs a quarterback. Jared Goff, of your Detroit Lions. Let's hear it for Jared Goff.
Absolutely. 7 touchdown passes through 3 games, and he's got a feast in front of him in Seattle right now. They are allowing a league-high 8.8 yards per pass attempt. It's time to fire up Goff, or at least have him in the holster, right?
Yeah, I mean, through 3 games, he's the 11th best quarterback in fantasy.
It's crazy.
Again, we've said this on this show many, many times. Give Jared Goff a clean pocket, he's fine. And so they've got some weapons there. They've got actually a pass-friendly offense. The defense is bad enough that they're going to have to continue to throw as well. Jared Goff is not – when you say, well, sometimes with fantasy, you're like, is this a fluke? The fact of the matter is again, Jared Goff has been a QB1 in fantasy before over the course of a season. It was a couple years ago in L.A., but as we always say, once you display a skill, you own it. And so he owns that skill. He is fantasy viable 100%. I don't think this is a fluke. He has a lot of nice weapons around him with Hawkinson and Swift and, of course, our sun god. So, yeah, give me some Jared Goff. To me, he needs to be 100% rostered.
Another guy available in almost 60% of leagues, Jameis Winston. Now, I know the touchdowns haven't been there, Matthew, but the pass attempts are going up each week, 40-plus in each of the last 2 weeks. Feels like they're starting to let Jameis be Jameis at this point.
A little bit. Now I want to see what the health is like for Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry. Both left the game with injuries last week. Chris Olave had a monster game as well. He was great, by the way. If for some reason Chris Olave is available in your league, he needs to obviously be rostered because that's coming, and that's coming soon. But, yeah, I like the matchup this week against the Vikings, right, who allow the 4th most passing yards per game. We expect Minnesota to be able to score on the New Orleans Saints. So Winston, I think, is a viable streaming option so far this week. He's QB 17 on the season. That's about right. He's a mid-tier QB2 with some upside in the right matchup. I think against the Vikings on Sunday is the right matchup.
All right, let's get to desperation hours here. Geno Smith available in over 90% of leagues. He's got the Lions, who have given up a lot of points to virtually everybody at this point. Is Geno Smith a desperation play right now?
He's viable. I mean, he's had 17 or more fantasy points and multiple touchdowns in 2 out of 3 games so far this season. He was a top 7 fantasy quarterback last week. Again, in the right matchup where he's having to throw and having to run around a little bit, we think that could potentially happen. On the road at Detroit, we expect the Lions to put up a lot of points. We talked about with Goff. So I do think, yes, if you are desperate, I'll have Geno Smith higher this week than I normally would in a given week. It's not ideal, but do I prefer him to Justin Fields, to Daniel Jones, to some of the other guys down there at the, as you're sifting through some of these guys that you kind of got to squint and be like, maybe I can make that work, maybe. maybe Marcus Mariota could be okay this week. Like, I do think Geno Smith is a viable desperation play this week.
All right, let's move over to tight ends right now and looking right at Browns tight end David Njoku, who's got the Falcons on deck. He's available in about 50% of leagues. Njoku with a big breakout in Week 3, 9 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown.
I saw this in a bunch of leagues where basically people dropped him just before the Thursday night game. Because, like, I'm not going to use him. He was bad the first 2 weeks. I don't want to be stuck with this roster spot for a guy that's going to play Thursday night, so I'm going to just drop him. Of course, then Thursday night he goes out, and he's nothing short of fantastic. You know, a 9 for 89 and as you see it there on your screen, 9 for 89 and a touchdown for David Njoku. He's playing on 90% of the pass plays so far this year. They're using him a lot. If you listen to Jacoby Brissett in the post-game interview that he did on Amazon Prime after the game, they talked about how important Njoku is to their running game, which is obviously the focal point of their offense. Njoku, very good blocking tight end as well. So he's going to be playing on a ton of snaps. He's going to be out there a lot. Jesse James did not play in Thursday night, so I do think he's sort of interesting as well. That's likely his best game of the season, but I also think it's a fairly narrow target tree in Cleveland. They are going to have to throw. Moving on quickly, just a couple other guys. Bob Tonyan, he's playing the Patriots this week. He had 7 targets in Week 3, tied for second on the team. Again, Sammy Watkins on the IR. Christian Watkins didn't play in that game, but feels like Bob Tonyan, who 2 years ago had a nice connection with Aaron Rodgers.
Touchdown machine.
Very touchdown dependent, unfortunately, but most tight ends are as well. And get this, through 3 weeks, Tyler Conklin has at least 7 targets in every game so far, 24 targets through the first 3 games. On the season, he's the 3rd best tight end in fantasy. Now, we will see what happens when Zach Wilson comes back, by the way, for quarterback waivers. Maybe we're stashing Zach Wilson as well because, listen, Flacco's been productive, and we're still waiting to see what we'll get out of Zach Wilson. But I do think he's kind of interesting as well. And I already mentioned deeper league. If you're just looking for someone to stash and hold, Gronk. I think there's a non-zero chance Gronk shows up this season. It's worth a flyer. Why not?
And if he comes back, you're getting production.
You're getting a top 10
for nothing right now.
For nothing.
It's available in every league. All right, if you want more waiver wire advice, check out Denny Carter's comprehensive waiver wire column on RotoWorld NBC Sports Edge. Right after our show at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, Denny is doing a live waiver wire Q&A session on youtube.com/NFL on NBC.
The new NFL on NBC YouTube channel. Go check out Denny live at noon, answering all of your waiver wire questions. And check out his column on rotoworld.com. It is super comprehensive. We will be back with more of this.
2 good defenses, 2 offenses in transition as the Niners go from Trey Lance to Garoppolo. Russell Wilson needs to find himself. I think Russell Wilson does not have 3 bad games in a row. Give me the Broncos at home tonight.
Look at that.
Look at that.
It's only one person.
That was me on Football Night in America. Reading a tweet now. Sam Wagman writes, at Matthew Berry TMR is the hero of this story. He believed in the Broncos when no one else did. And it shows a graphic there of every single person on Football Night in America, including America making the pick. They all took the Niners, Connor Rogers, but one man believed in the Broncos. One man has 2 thumbs and believed in the Broncos, and that's this guy right here.
You are officially Broncos country.
There you go.
Should let you,
let's ride.
They should let you come out on the horse.
That's right, 100%, right? I thought that was weird. Just like I thought we don't talk about the picks before we make them, right? So I honestly was shocked that I was the only one that took the Broncos in a basically a pick 'em game, and the Broncos are the home team. So I was shocked that I was the only one that took it. Interesting. So anyway, that worked out well for me. I don't want to make any more picks.
No, go out on top.
Exactly.
You're
done.
Mic
Mic drop and leave
Last
it.
day.
I'm going to have to make picks next week for Football Night in America right here on NBC and Peacock. Real quickly, we just want to talk about some of the MVP odds, right? These are provided by our friends over at BetMGM. Look at my ride or die, Jalen Hurts, who started the season at plus 2,200, and now he's just plus 700.
I mean, if you got yourself a little Jalen Hurts ticket, you could be sitting pretty big.
Tua Tagovailoa started at plus 5,000. He's now down to plus 1,400. Meanwhile, I think this is sort of interesting. Aaron Rodgers, who's won the last 2 years, plus 1,000. Now he's plus 2,000. I might want to put a little money on Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
I don't want to bet against Aaron Rodgers again. They're still 2-1. He's going to get better if they end up going far. He's always a guy that can handle it. And Joe Burrow up to plus 2,500.
One note on this board, 2 of the top 3 will square off this week, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is the Ravens offense. I like his value because they're still going to win a lot of games. Plus 550, I should say, started over plus 2,000 as well. Can't wait to see that game. Anyway, that's it for today. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Connor Rogers, I'm Matthew Berry. Check us out tomorrow. Thank you for dropping by. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.